Hi, everybody. Welcome. Happy Friday. James Heimowitz. I'm the president of China Institute, and it's a delight to welcome you here to join us for your Friday afternoon lunch break, I hope. These are truly extraordinary times. As I sit around me and I try to sort of digest and assimilate everything that's going on around us, I can't think of a more important time to ask all of you to stand with us at China Institute. If you're not a member, please go to the website, have a look and consider it. Our supporters look to us and look to our membership base as an acknowledgement of and recognition of an endorsement of our mission. And our mission is really about dialogue, it's about engagement, and it's about communicating across cultures. And at the end, that means embracing diversity. And I can't think of anybody more qualified and more enlightening to speak about this topic than my friend WU Hao. For those of you who haven't seen some of his extraordinary films like The People's Republic of Desire and All in My Family, and I'm told today a new one that's on its way that's top secret, so we can't really talk about it, but there is more coming. I can't think of anybody who helps us embrace diversity and connect across a common humanity in a way that unites us in such a powerful way than the works of WU Hao. So it's just a delight to be able to sit here and listen. And you didn't come here to listen to me. I just wanted to say a few words of welcome and hand it over to Dinda Elliott, who has masterminded this series about Pieces of China, which helps us sort of digest and absorb little bits about a very different and complex culture in digestible pieces. So over to you, Dinda.
Wonderful. Thank you, James. And welcome to the second episode of Pieces of China, which is a China Institute series that tells the story of China one object at a time. I'm Dinda Elliott, and we are honored today to have WU Hao, who is an award-winning documentary filmmaker whose poignant film, All in My Family, follows him as he takes his husband and two children back to his hometown in China to meet his conservative parents for the first time. WU Hao chose as his object To Change China, a book by the Yale historian Jonathan Spence about 16 Westerners who traveled to China over the centuries, from doctors to engineers and missionaries. And they all went to China hoping to change the country, often to introduce Christianity and Western values. And mostly they didn't have a whole lot of success. So I want to jump right in to WU Hao and to ask you, Hao, why on earth did you choose this book as your object? And what was happening in your life when you first read the book?
First of all, thanks, Dinda, for inviting me here. Yes, in terms of when I think about the books that influenced me a lot, To Change China is definitely one of them. I discovered this book around the time when I moved back to China in 2004. I had immigrated to the US in 1992. For a long time, I had never thought I would move back to China because I thought I was this young kid from China who really admired the American way of life, the American value. And I wanted to stay here, be myself, because I had thought in China I couldn't be myself. Growing up gay, growing up being different, growing up in the 1980s, during that era when China was trying anxiously to learn from the West. I was one of the children of that generation. But in 2004, I had a breakup with my long-term partner at that time. I didn't know where to go. Just like very randomly, I thought, why not moving back to China to get to see that country again? So I made a quick decision in a month. And once I landed in Beijing in 2004, even though I had never expected to move back to China, I found that new experience living in China again pretty exhilarating, because the country, at that time, I felt like I could understand part of it, but at the same time, a lot of it has changed, and it was really intriguing. So I started hanging out with a lot of my Chinese friends as well as expat friends in Beijing, really trying to understand how much China has changed and how much it hasn't, and why it hasn't. And especially at that time, I'm also dealing with my family, with my conservative family. They were still, like, that was 3 years after I had come out to them. They were still struggling with acknowledging me being gay. I was thinking a lot about how I could change their point of view about my way of life. Can they accept that? So a lot of it was struggling through my mind. Then I started reading about Chinese history, especially from a Western perspective, how the West has trying to understand, interpret Chinese history. Then I bumped into this book. And then once I read it, I was like, wow, that makes a lot of sense because, you know, I think throughout the generation, throughout the centuries, people always wanted to change China, not just the Western missionaries, Western experts, but also Chinese as well. When Chinese people go overseas, they learn the Western values. They want to bring these values back to China. A lot of times they hit the wall. They feel like they could not make progress and they feel disillusioned and give up. And then I feel like reading that book gave me comfort that it's a great and challenging work to change any aspect of China, but at the same time, it gives me hope that China could change slowly, begrudgingly.
So that's fascinating. In All My Family, you tell a very personal story, and the film is so powerful and extremely touching. And by the way, it is available on Netflix for anybody who wants to watch it. It's very wonderful. But I'm wondering, in that film, does your own work echo some of the stories told by Spence in a sense? Is this, in a sense, your own way to change China?
I can't say in my work, I'm aiming to change China in any way through my work, but I just feel like that film, All in My Family, documents the process of me trying to change my family and the compromises we reach in the end in order to keep the family together. When I was growing up, like once again, coming of age in the 1980s, I had thought I have learned this Western value of being free, assert your own individuality. I was absolutely right. My parents' generation, they were too old. They were too reactionary to fully understand me. All I can do is to leave them behind to pursue freedom and happiness. That was my thinking growing up. But then I think when I first came out to them, and they had a very hard time accepting that. Obviously, both my parents were heartbroken. But then I brushed it aside. I was like, those are the older generation's reaction. I should not take that into consideration in my own you know, way of thinking and behavior. I should just move forward to embrace the future. But then as I grow older, as I understand China and US more and more, both the good and the bad on each side, I think I became to have a better understanding, especially after reading books like Jonathan Spence's book. And I came to have a much more and more nuanced understanding of what tradition represents, what China represents. And so I feel like I became much more accommodating of what I used to consider to be backward thinking from my parents. And I also came to appreciate the kind of love they have despite my having broken their hearts several times. So I feel like that film, All in My Family, documents my way of trying to reach out across the aisle to understand them and their effort in trying to understand me and the tentative truths we have reached in order to continue to love each other. So in that way, I think we change each other because we continue to communicate with each other.
Wow, that's amazing. So China has long followed the philosophy 中学为体,西学为用, which is basically the idea that Chinese learning and philosophy should be the real foundation, but knowledge from the West should be for pragmatic and technical uses only. The West is still trying to change China, aren't we? Ultimately, do you think it's possible to change China?
China has already been changed. So reading this book, To Change China, right? I mean, a lot of it resonates because a lot of what the missionaries are trying to do and a lot of the technical experts are trying to do in China are very similar to what a lot of Westerners are doing right now. So on some level, history repeats itself. But on the other hand, I feel like the situation is definitely different now. Like the idea of democracy, of science, the De Xiansheng, Mr. Science and Mr. Democracy, it hasn't fully like bloomed in China, but at the same time, it has taken roots. People in China are talking about rule of law, the concept of rule of law, the idea of democracy, and also science and diversity. And so I think China has been slowly is being changed. For example, like taking one issue as an example, like LGBTQ issue in China, it's still tremendously difficult for queer people in China to live openly and happily. But compared to the era like 1980s and 1990s, when I was growing up in China, there's a lot more room for freedom, at least for queer people in China. Things have improved tremendously already.
I love what you said about the possibility that we can change each other, and that you and your family, for example, that you have in a sense changed each other through the process of dialogue. You know, Spence writes that the Westerners in his book, quote, speak to us still with a shared intensity about the ambiguities of superiority and about the indelible realm where altruism and exploitation meet. So what does this tell you about today? And I know you've talked about humility. You know, what do you think we can learn from you know, seeing the experience of these Westerners trying to change China?
I think two things. One is that we need to be honest what we're trying, when we say we want to change China, what we're really trying to get out of it. I mean, if it's economic interest we're trying to gain, let's talk about trade and economics. But at the same time, if we feel like ideologically we want to change China, we have to truly understand each country has gone through its own path to reach its current situation, and we have to be humble and have some humility to understand each country has its own baggages, and it's a complex reality of socioeconomic factors at play, and to really listen to each other to be able to truly communicate and effect change. Basically, like after I started really sitting down and talking to my parents about why they feel so heartbroken by my coming out, that created an opening for both sides to be able to share our differences, but at the same time to assert the foundation of the relationship between the two generations, which is love, which is mutual respect. Once we reached there, it was a lot easier for us to talk about the other differences, about their concerns of seeing my kids growing up with two dads and no mother. So that kind of opened up the possibility for conversation. So in the end, we just openly agreed to that we're never going to be in sync on everything, but we can still stay together as a family. So that's one thing I learned, being humble.
And you've gone back to see them a number of times, right? So tell us a little bit about what your relationship with your family is now, and what's their relationship with their grandchildren? Do they accept them?
Yes, my my parents have fully accepted my family and my children as their own, and it's been wonderful. It's been wonderful. Every single time I go back to China, I keep on pushing them to come out to more of my extended family. Last summer when I went back, I came out to my cousin. So my cousin were also very welcoming to our modern American family. So it's been really heartwarming to see that I don't think I can change China, but also it's heartwarming to see I can change people around me little by little, bit by bit.
That's very beautiful. Thank you. And unfortunately, we need to stop here because we're out of time. But I promised you all that we are going to bring WU Hao back again to share his insights. And next time, maybe we'll get him to talk about film. So thank you all so much for joining us. This episode will be uploaded onto YouTube, so you can watch again and share with others. And please join us next week on Thursday, June 11th, to hear from the West's most famous Chinese cookbook author, Fuchsia Dunlop, who will talk about the transcendent nature of the humble cleaver. Finally, I want to encourage you all to support members, to become members of China Institute, and your support brings great discounts, firstly, but it also allows us to bring brilliant speakers like WU Hao and all of our other great programs too. So thank you so much, Hao, for helping us tell the story of China.
Thank you, Dina and China Institute.